Drew, first off, again, welcome into the show, man. Could you give me a little background, I guess? So let's start there on what Boveda is all about.
Boveda is a 24-year-old company that cut its teeth with a solution to a problem in the cigar industry. So it's my cigar box. And Boveda started, it's kind of like I watched all you guys walking around with your equipment for the cannabis world. Boveda came up with a portable, self-contained, disposable, two-way precise humidity control product 24 years ago in the cigar business. So that's where we got our start. And then 5 years ago, or 5 years later, the company found another need for this kind of portable, precise humidity control in the guitar and precious musical instrument business. So we developed with D'Addario Strings, we developed, the name of the company at the time was Humidipack, and we developed a solution for guitars. So if you're going to go out and spend $5, $6, $7, $10,000 on a beautiful guitar, the last thing you need to happen is those precious woods would dry out and they'd degrade, and you'd end up with a broken guitar. So we solved a problem in the cigar industry. We solved a problem in the guitar and violin, viola, cello, that whole industry. Those products. We also developed a product for reeds, for clarinets and oboes, stuff like that. And then about 13 years ago, we discovered that a lot of our products were being bought in huge volume at a handful of specific stores in cannabis country, Colorado, California, Washington, Oregon. We started noticing this huge volume. People were going in and buying our product. And then we started noticing busts on the East Coast with cannabis busts, and we'd see the Boveda packs in the packs that were getting confiscated. So we reached out to people that we knew in the cannabis industry, and they helped us develop a very specific humidity level for cannabis preservation. And that's really where we stand today. You talk about crossover and the difficulty with crossover, man. The fact that we were able, Boveda is a salt-based product. Salt is key. Salt is an imperative ingredient when you're going to precisely control humidity. You can't precisely control humidity with other elements. Salt's like the key to our engine. And the fact that we could come up with a different natural salt to actually fit a humidity target for cannabis is really why we were able to transition effectively into the cannabis industry.
That's crazy. Now, I see that we have a couple of questions. Guys, I'll get to those in just a second. Before we do you have any examples of ways that people tried to control moisture in cannabis in the past before Boveda packs?
I have personal examples from when I was in college. A long time ago, we used to have a friend in Hawaii that would grace us with an occasional package of beautiful buds, and we'd get them, and they were all hermetically sealed and beautifully packaged. But as soon as you'd open them up, the speed of degrade, I mean, everybody that loves weed knows that it gets dry in a hurry, depending on where you are. I mean, if you're in Central South Florida, you probably don't have a problem with it getting dry too fast. You have a problem with it being too wet too fast. But you'd open up a pound of that bud and it would get crunchy in a hurry. So back in the day, we used to use wet paper towel. We used it very high tech. We used to use tortillas. I mean, we used to have a shirt at Boveda that said save your tortillas for Taco Tuesday, because people would throw a tortilla, which had a certain moisture content, into a bag of weed, and it would make a difference, albeit not very precise, and also exposing you to all sorts of different organic compounds that could affect your butt. So there's a lot of things. People put pieces of banana, citrus, orange peel, orange slices. I don't know. I'd be curious what other solutions people have had traditionally. If they can chime in on that, that'd be interesting. But we were the first precise, portable, disposable, no hassle, two-way precise humidity control. And precision is really important. You guys at GreenBroz know all about precision. I mean, you've made a name for yourself by inventing and propagating and throughout the industry really precise equipment that delivers a real quality outcome. And that's the same thing for Boveda. We're very different in that we're a packet that you insert into whatever you want to keep at a precise humidity level. And when I say precise humidity level, I'm saying a Boveda pack that's rated at a 62% relative humidity, that's going to absorb humidity in a pack that's wet down to the 62% number, and it's going to add humidity to a pack up to the 62% number. So it's genuine, precise, two-way humidity control for whatever it's packaged with. And in our case, we're talking about cannabis flower.
Now to get to our first question, we've got some really cool comments. Someone just said, "Have a nice day from Brazil." Another one said, "I love Boveda, Miss Kush Princess." I'm sure they love you too. To speak on what Drew just said,
we love you.
To speak to what Drew just said, if you had any other ways growing up, I know I have comments turned off. That's so that you can see Drew's face without a bunch of comments, hopefully all over his face. But if you want to, just hit that question box and add in how you used to control moisture or how you tried to, and I'll make sure I'll shout it out to Drew, and we can talk about it if it's any brings up any memories for him. Sir Smoke a Lot 303 said, "What percentage is better for Colorado's dry environment?"
So Colorado's really the reason why we came up with a secondary Boveda cannabis humidity. We initially issued a 62%. The general rule of thumb is you want to get cannabis flower below 65% and above 55% for the ideal window of precision for keeping cannabis at its ultimate quality. There were certain growers in Colorado that challenged us to come up with a number between 55 and 59, and we found a natural salt that worked at 58%. So a lot of the people in Colorado use 58%. A lot of people in Colorado still, Colorado's just a really old school traditional market. Even though we've got a strong following in Colorado, so much of your weed in Colorado is not protected by precise two-way humidity control. So we've issued a challenge to people to actually have an opportunity to test our product side by side with Boveda, without Boveda, with Boveda, against any other. And there are other knockoff brands that have come into our market and tried to compete with us. And we're all about people having their own experience and making up their own minds. So please, if you will DM GreenBroz, we'll share the information and we'll hook you up with opportunity to test Boveda against anything you want to test it against. The other thing that I should probably tell you is we are not shy about swag, and we're delighted to have people. I don't know if you saw this at the MJ Biz convention, hats that we came up with for Save the Terps. Save the Terps is an interesting story. You know, we had a very aggressive brand come into our space. We created the category 24 years ago, or 25 years ago. I lose track. But we created the category, and we've gone out of our way to deliver a really precise quality product. And no matter who you are, I mean, GreenBroz isn't the only trimmer company in the world or handling company in the world, but you guys have established yourself as a category creator, and you've really done some things innovation-wise that set you apart from everybody else in the industry. So It's been our experience too. We established the category 24 years ago. We've constantly improved on it. We'll stake our reputation against any and all comers. But when people attacked us, they said there were some people, and you know full well that if people don't know or if they have opinions, they'll oftentimes have all sorts of lore about what's real in the cannabis industry. And we had people that said out loud that humidity control steals terps. And so we set out to research that because we take it seriously when somebody criticizes us. And we came out with a whole bunch of papers and a whole bunch of studies that not only refuted the fact that we steal terps, but in reality, the science has proven that we preserve terps. So you remember the old, I don't know, do you love cannabis flower?
Yeah, I love it. I'm not in love with it, but I love it. Yeah.
So traditionally, and I remember every bag I opened back in the day, you get a big nose hit off the bag. And so often people judge the quality of flower because they really don't have anything else to go by. You judge it by that nose hit that you get off the bag when you open it. Good news and bad news. The good news is the smell that you're smelling is indicative of what used to be in the flower. The bad news is those terps, all that pungent yumminess that you're experiencing, that's history.
Yep.
There may still be a significant amount of that in the flower that you're smelling, and I think everybody certainly hopes and prays that that's the case. But when you take a nose hit, that's in the headspace. That's not in the flower. That's coming out, and that's just beautifully intoxicating and wonderful to experience. And everybody has a positive emotional reaction to that. But what we discovered was if you properly control the humidity post-cure in your storage packaging, and then likewise in your retail finished packaging, the 8s and the Mylar bags and the jars and the joints and all that, if you properly protect your bud, you're going to give your consumer a better quality outcome. They're going to have more pleasure, and the key thing is to have an allegiance to a brand to actually come back and buy it again because they had such a great experience. If you smoke a harsh joint, or I call them joints because I'm old, if you smoke a harsh cone or a harsh pre-roll, you're not necessarily going to go racing back to the dispensary to get that, regardless of the level of quality of flower. We've actually had people packaged with Boveda with a mid-range quality product that gets higher ratings from people in consumer feedback studies. It gets higher ratings than some of the higher quality bud that's delivered without Boveda, because no matter how good it was at the grow facility, and we trust that it was primo when it left the grow facility, in the process of transportation, in the process of sitting in distribution, sitting on the shelf, there's leak downs on those packages. The bud continues to decay, and if it's not properly protected, you don't get as high quality an outcome.
And what's interesting about what you said, there's a lot to unpack, but we at GreenBroz completely identify with you guys in dealing with competition. We'll show up any day, anywhere with one of our machines, be it our trimmer or sorter or batcher, and we'll go head to head with anybody. Our equipment stacks up, and you're totally right in terms of the innovation. For instance, the GreenBroz trimmer has a blade angle, and that's patented. So no one can use that blade angle technology that we use. And we've had people try to do knockoffs before, but you're right. Cream kind of rises to the top. Now, let's see. I have a lot of people throwing shout outs. Okay, cool. I guess let's just go down the list. Does Boveda salts absorb terps? Now, you kind of just hit on that, but do you want to touch on it again?
Yeah, the direct answer is no. You're going to have a different experience with properly humidified bud than you are with bud that's drying out at a rapid pace.
And to clarify that, you said when you open the bag, you get that smell. That's actually like burst off or burnt off terpenes from it being improperly stored. So in theory, if you open a bag and it's not as pungent, that would possibly mean that most of it is still remaining in the flower, right? Like if it was stored. So that would be a little bit different of a bag opening experience.
Possibly, yeah, it's possible. Now you got to understand, from the time you, and I'm sorry to break this to everybody, but you killed the plant when you cut it down.
Yep.
Okay, and my apologies to anybody that thinks that live rosin actually exists. It's not really live. I get that they mean what they mean by that, but you killed the plant when you cut it down. You put it through a process of drying and curing in order to equalize the certain gases that you want to get out of the flower and put it in a position to be premium quality for consumption. And you're either going to support it with humidity control or you're not. Some people choose not to for a variety of reasons because they believe that their bud is so good that it goes so fast and it gets to market so quickly that they don't need humidity control. And that's a really fair opinion to have. And everybody's got a right to their own opinion, but you really don't have a right to your own facts. We go into markets, we buy up all sorts of brands. We take their flower back to the hotel or back to our local reps that are in market, and they have water activity meters and they test the flower. So you might have stuff that tests out between 55 and 65 at the grow facility before it ships. But we find, depending on where you are, if I'm in the heart of Colorado, I'm going to find a lot of stuff that tests out at 28, 32, 35, 45. If you find good bud that tests out better than 48% in Colorado, you've got an extraordinary brand that's delivering awesome quality. But if we isolated what the difference is between 48% relative humidity and 55 or 58%, the amount of that delta is really significant in terms of the amount of weight. Weight, everything's being sold by weight, and also the condition of those terpenes and the cannabinoids that, as much as the water is evaporating out of the flower, it's not leaving on its own. It's leaving with terpenes, all sorts of cannabinoids. It's a process of degrade that we're trying to slow down. We're not in effect eliminating the degrade because organic compounds continue to degrade over time with oxygen and different things. So our whole point is we can take, like if you took your favorite grower and you picked up an ounce if it was legal, like let's just assume that it's legal to go to that grower and buy an ounce at the shop. You're going to twist one up and you're going to smoke it, and you're going to have an experience that is as close to perfect as that grower would describe their craft. That is the primo, that is the a priori, the absolute peak of the experience. It's going to degrade quickly. You may have a 2 to 3 week window with unprotected flower to have a decent experience. And after 2 to 3 weeks, and that's not very long when you think about packaging, distribution, store shelf, you may look at the label on a jar or a bag of cannabis. You may look at that and see packed on date. I mean, it's June 3rd today. You may have stuff in shops that was packed in January. It might have been packed in November. We have clients in Canada. Canada is also famous for having ridiculously dry weed, and it all has to go through a government distribution process, and it sits there for anywhere from 3 to 6 months. It's devastating to the quality of cannabis flower. And everybody up to this point has been talking about access. It's all been about getting cannabis. Now that we've established a fairly consistent supply chain of access in the cannabis industry where it's legal, now the conversation is shifting to quality. And the future for cannabis is all about quality. So our whole trip is, we determined after we did all this research on terpenes and where they were going and what was happening to them. First of all, we established that none of them are going into our packs. None of it's being absorbed by the salt. None of it's going through the pack into in some sense, anything, like even if your fingers touch cannabis flower, they'll smell. like cannabis because there's a little bit of terpenes on your fingers. You're also going to get a little bit on the paper of the pack, okay? But that's a de minimis amount of terpenes. But what we discovered is instead of having a situation where we're stealing terps, what was actually happening with the Boveda pack, and we've got some awesome video of this at GreenBroz.Inc if you want to watch how trichomes actually decay and what happens in their life cycle and where the gases go, where the terpenes go. You can find all sorts of things at GreenBroz.Inc. But what we discovered is, and this is a great concept for people to get hooked on, is if it's packed with Boveda, it's going to have Boveda is so aggressive when it's in the package, either in storage or in a retail package. It delivers a monolayer of moisture that surrounds the flower, that surrounds the trichome, and creates a protective barrier that minimizes the amount of terpenes and cannabinoids that are escaping from the flower. So what we're really in the business of doing is we're the original terpene shield. As opposed to being a terpene thief, we're actually the original terpene shield. That monolayer of moisture comes around the trichome head and preserves it, keeps it in as high quality of a situation as it can possibly be in, from cure to consumption. I mean, our goal at the end of the day is to have all of our partners and quality brands choose to work with Boveda because they want to have brand loyalty. They want people to come back and buy the flower again. In one of the areas, do you smoke a lot of pre-rolls?
I'm mainly just flower myself. Yeah, I mean, obviously pre-rolls are flower, but typically through like, pipe or bong or whatever. But I do from time to time, yeah.
So the number one way that cannabis is consumed worldwide today is pre-rolls or cones. And when you grind flower and you bust up trichomes, you create a volatile situation where the gates open and the cannabinoids and the terpenes can escape. There's no gate to keep them in. You can have a really good package that you're packing those joints in, but if it doesn't have proper humidity control, precise two-way humidity control with the monolayer effect, if that doesn't happen, I guarantee you that the smoking experience at the end of the line for the consumer is not going to be as enjoyable as if they had proper humidity control. The other thing that we love to tell people is, especially in markets where you're buying ridiculously dry bud, if you want to have a better smoking experience, ask your dispensary, where's the Boveda? We have packs, you're familiar with Sea-Vault, right?
Mm-hmm. Great containers.
It's a humidor for cannabis. They're a great partner of ours. So in the dispensaries, this is a 4-gram pack. This actually weighs 4 grams. And what this will protect is up to a half an ounce of cannabis. So if you're at the dispensary and you're buying something unprotected, grab some of these because they'll either sell them to you or give them to you. A lot of dispensaries actually give them to you. They will, you put it in in the Sea-Vault with the Boveda or in your glass jar, whatever you're using. We really like Sea-Vault because that, again, is so precise and so reliable. This will rejuvenate your weed overnight. So if you bought dry bud, put a Boveda in there overnight in a Sea-Vault or a glass jar and taste the difference the next day. It is dramatic, the difference the next day.
We're talking with Drew Emmer of Boveda, again, the global leaders in two-way humidity control. Ted, I think I got to your follow-up, or I think Drew did when he was talking about the terps and everything, and you can go to BovedaInc.com, anyone out there, and check out the videos. There's some... Drew, do you guys have any of those papers that you guys put out on your website?
Yeah, we actually, if you want to DM Boveda Cannabis or GreenBroz, we want to also cite a little bit of a the Save the Terps hat has been super popular for us. The Boveda T-shirts.
Are the hats and shirts for sale on your site?
Yeah, they're for sale on our site, but with GreenBroz, here's what I'll do. I'll commit to 10 hats for GreenBroz to give away. And then if you DM GreenBroz and share your details, your name, your email address, and your if you want to save us a step, send us your shipping address. Send it to GreenBroz, they'll forward it to us. GreenBroz will capture your information. Boveda will capture your information. We're not going to abuse the privilege. We're really careful about how we treat people. But we'll hook you up. We'll put you in line to get a hat or a shirt, or even we'll nominate 2 or 3 of the people that DM GreenBroz. We'll nominate them for a Boveda Challenge kit, which is probably a $50 or $60 item that includes a couple of sea vaults, a bunch of Boveda, a bunch of Futurola accessories, a bunch of King Palm accessories, stuff. It's really a nice package. So if you want to get in on that, send it to GreenBroz. GreenBroz will share it with us, because we both want to know who you are. We both want to know how to love you in the future, and we'll take good care of you.
Okay, sounds great, guys. So everyone, you heard them. Go ahead, hit us up in the DMs. We've got 10 hats. We've got a couple of the packs. I know Gross Sisters commented that they want to be a tester, so I'm sure they could take the Boveda challenge. They also asked, how long will a pack last? You talked about how much it will help, but how long will a pack last?
It's a great question. So it depends on the conditions at the beginning of the process, and it depends on the conditions in your area. So we've had people take a pound in Santa Rosa, California, or Humboldt County, California, or at the grow facility in Colorado. We've had people put our 67-gram pack, which is the size that goes into a pound. We've had people seal it in the pound. It's this size. They put that in a pound, and we've had people leave it for up to almost a year. And the way you can tell if a Boveda pack is spent is if it gets crispy and rigid. So inside this, the only thing inside this pack is natural salt. There's a different natural salt for each humidity level, and purified water, and a binding agent. So as the water dissipates out of this pack, all that's left in there is the salt. So it gets brittle. When it starts to get brittle, it's time to get a new Boveda. And then that's the shortest answer. You'll have packs that'll last. If I put one of these in up to an ounce in Denver, Colorado, I always tell people at shows, it depends how often you open and close your container. And I know in your case that's really often, so it's not going to last very long. But this should last 2 to 3 months minimum. And we've had people that have shown up with like a Medtainer, which is a food grade polyethylene container that's got a grinder in it. And Medtainer with this in it with cannabis flower will keep it fresh. I mean, we've had guys show us packs where just one of these has lasted 7, 8, 9 months. So if you ask us, they last too long because, one of the reasons Boveda is not only the highest quality product in the marketplace, but also one of the more higher priced products in the marketplace is because they last a long time. This pack will last 6 to 12 times longer than any other pack in the industry. So when you go to compare us to other packs, make sure you take into consideration that we last a long time.
Greenhouse Lab, I'll get to your question in just a second. Just Jane Grows also coming up. Dwayne Von Edison, I have to just throw him a shout out. He said, I love the Boveda challenge, took it and won't ever look back. I would love to get more kits for military vets. Thank you for my swag box. Just to comment on that, GreenBroz being a veteran-owned company, we love to support veterans and help veterans whenever we can. So, Dwayne, make sure you DM us with your info, and we can get a conversation going, and we can definitely make sure you're one of those couple of Boveda Challenge Kit recipients, because we always try to hook up vets whenever we can, and that addresses his other question. It's just a comment on them as well. Just Jane Grows. It's a 2-part question. Use Boveda pack after drying as soon as you start curing in buckets, or after curing a little while. I guess the better question is, when should the Boveda pack be introduced to cannabis after drying?
So I can tell you what common practices are, but we don't pretend to be experts on curing, even though our product is so precise. you have to have a period of time of straight drying that happens on a rack or hanging or whatever your particular practice is. There has to be a period of dry. The curing process really begins probably after 10 to 15 days. I don't know. It used to be that people were in such a rush to get to market that the drying and curing process was really brief. We've had people with craft cannabis, though, that are doing cures with temperature control, humidity control, and specifically designed packaging for long-term cures. We've got people curing for 3 months, 6 months. That's really rare, but it's starting to happen. So typically the Boveda comes in after the drying process, the 1 to 3 week drying process, whatever the circumstances are in your area. That's typically when the Boveda comes into play. Because Boveda is precise, it will absorb excess water. So you're going to still have stuff coming out of the flower that the Boveda pack is going to allow it to keep doing its curing process, but it's not going to let it go down below that number that's printed on the pack. The curious thing with a lot of these markets is there are some craft growers in California and Colorado that insist on driving the flower down to 50% and then rehydrating, letting it sit at 50% for a period of time, and then rehydrating into storage. So they'll take it down to 50 and they'll bring it back up to the 58 to 62% range for storage. It's all personal preference. You're all crafts people. Even the home grower, by trial and error, is going to learn what works best for them. So we want to support you in developing your own best practices. We don't want to dictate to you that this is how you got to do it. And there's a lot of great stories. If you get a chance to pick on our friends at Seavault, John and Ryan and Gary at Seavault, they will help you out. They will go out of their ways. If you're not following Seavault, you should be following Seavault. They're awesome. They're also very generous with swag. They've actually got some new swag coming in that you're going to want to have. So check out Seavault. Ask questions on these live events and podcasts. The other thing that I should mention to you is Boveda's got a podcast. That's me and Scott. That's our little avatar for the Cultivate podcast. We'd love to have you guys on our podcast and talk about the partnership that we've been in with GreenBroz. We got a great thing going on right now with the Grow Off. I mean, you guys have supported the Grow Off. We've supported the Grow Off. We got involved with a group, SaveTheTerps.org. I know that we were going to talk about that at some time. SaveTheTerps.org is a bunch of smart people that got together and jumped on the bandwagon of Save the Terps. There is a cause here. There is a quality issue. There is a best practices sort of think tank of people that are working together. It includes the folks at Boveda, the American Trade Association on Cannabis and Hemp, the Cannabis Certification Council, Americans for Safe Access, GreenBroz, Orion GMP, and Seavault are people that are involved right now. You can get involved if you want to go to SaveTheTerps.org, and that's another group that if you're inclined to dig swag, Save the Terps is also giving away some of those hats.
Great swag across the board. I've seen some of Seavault's swag too, so I can definitely recommend that. Don't forget, if you just tuned in, we're giving away 10 hats and a couple of the Boveda Challenge kits. So DM us with your name, your email, and then a shipping address where we could send this to you if we pick you. A couple more questions with Drew Emmer of Boveda. Again, hit them up at GreenBroz.Inc, the global leaders in two-way humidity control. Just talked about Save the Terps initiative, a really cool initiative we're proud to be a part of. The Grow Off, another cool one we're proud to be a part of. I have some questions that I want to get to, but first, more questions from the inbox. We actually got one from one of our sales managers, Leslie, up in Washington, which is why I love our team, because they always tune in and they try to learn more themselves, which is the key to always getting better, is just learning. She said, how much moisture can the Boveda pack remove? Now, I know you talked about it earlier. If you put a 62% Boveda pack in, it'll draw the moisture down to 62 or raise it up to 62, depending on if it's lower or higher. But is there a limit to that? Does it have to be at a certain level? Like, is there ever a flower that's too far gone to where Boveda couldn't help? Or is there ever a flower that's way too moist to where a pack wouldn't make a difference?
So that larger pack that I showed you weighs 67 grams when it's fresh. That pack will absorb about 35% of its weight in excess moisture. So there is a limit to how much it'll puff up, like the Stay Puft Marshmallow. It gets bigger. Okay, who doesn't like the Stay Puft Marshmallow? So it'll absorb 35 to 40% of its weight, and the product is actually about 40% water in the first place. So it'll lose 40% of its weight. So if you were a scientist, you could weigh that pack and add 35% to 67 grams, and when it reached that, I should know what that is off the top of my head. It told me there would be no math. Okay.
That's about 20 grams-ish, something around there.
Yeah,
right?
something like that.
I don't know.
But yes, there is an upper limit to how much it will absorb, and if you put a fresh Boveda pack in, it'll start over and start absorbing. The beautiful thing about that is the danger in the cannabis industry is bud that's stored above 65% has an enhanced mold risk and other pathogens. So we want you to get your flower down below 65% before you start bundling it up and packing it up for either storage or for retail. And then if you add the Boveda packs, we'll help you keep it at a precise humidity level that is below 65. It'll be plus or minus a fraction of a percent. We're usually pretty spot on that 62% or 58% if that's what you choose to use.
All right, couple more questions here. Greenhouse Lab asked, what do you recommend to be the apex for drying cannabis and short-term storage? What do you recommend to be the apex for drying cannabis and short-term storage? I don't really know what they mean by apex. I figured it was a term you would know.
Yeah, well, I don't want anything stored above 65%, so I want to get below the 65% threshold as quickly as possible. If I were growing flower and I were curing flower, I would probably be a great guy to ask, and this would actually be an awesome interview, is Gary Swanson from Seavault. Is an absolute old school weed guy. Gary Swanson. You can find Gary at if you go to Seavault on Instagram. Ryan and John can hook you up with Gary. Gary knows more about curing and storing and maintaining cannabis flower than anybody I know. That's why he invented the product that's known as the humidor for weed. Typically, his approach is crash it down to mid 50s or low 50s, and then bring it back up after you've had it down there for a little bit. Bring it back up and maintain it at that 58 to 62% level.
So it sounds like we got to do a podcast with, or a GreenBroz Live with Seavault. So that's really exciting.
These guys, they're weed aficionados. They're great business people. They're good-hearted people. This is the cool thing about the cannabis industry, and I'd be interested to know if people agree with this. There's an ethic in the cannabis industry. There's a spirit in the community that is all about taking care of each other. Cannabis is not the dog-eat-dog world that you find in so many other commercial businesses. This is a community that believes in taking care of people, being kind to people, respecting people. The cannabis community reaction to all the trauma this last week since George Floyd's death, which is right here in Minneapolis, where I'm actually sitting in Minnetonka, which is a first-ring suburb of Minneapolis, and we're at ground zero for where this whole thing went down with the misguided Minneapolis cop that murdered George Floyd. But the community has been ridiculously wonderful about speaking up and speaking out and standing up for each other. So Gary and the gang at Seavault are going to take great care of you guys. GreenBroz we've met the crew at GreenBroz. They're awesome people. They're all in this for the right reasons. But there's a level of altruism where if you're a jerk in this industry, you should hear the clock ticking because you're not going to be in this industry very long.
No, seriously, we echo that, and we love you guys, and that's definitely why we wanted to partner.